Prede was a goodly child with a fine face. He had no father. His father had died, but had a good mother. One day, his mother asked him to go to the farm to pick palm nuts and some palm branches which she would bundle as broomsticks, as the one they had become short, and so she could also make dinner for her children. Off he set out with his sack and machete. He came across an elderly fisherman holding a fishing net and a basket full of fish he had caught. Prede greeted the man and made to continue on his path. The elderly man responded,
"Thank you, my son."
He then asked,
"My boy, can you please help me with this basket of fish? I have been fishing all day and I need some help."
Prede turned and answered,
I am on an errand for my mother, and I need to make good of the daylight so I can get back in time to help in making dinner. I'm sorry, I will not be able to help you, sir.
"Very well,"
said the elderly fisherman, and Prede went on his way. But as Prede walked hastily away, he began to ponder on his decision not to assist the elder.
Perhaps his hut is not so far. I could probably make it in good time.
Prede thought. Swiftly, he turned around and raced to catch up with the fisherman. When he sighted him, he called out,
Sir! Sir! Excuse me, sir!
Running to him and slightly out of breath, he drew to a halt right in front of the elderly fisherman, as he knew it may be discomforting for the old man to halt and turn. He said,
Let me help. I'll help you and make it back home.
The elderly fisherman smiled and gave him just the basket. But Prede also insisted on carrying the net as well.
Sir, where is your house?
Just at the foot of the Blazing King Mountain,
said the elderly fisherman.
Quite a distance. I will be quick, and if I'm late on my mother's errand, I will apologize profusely.
Prede thought to himself. Prede arrived at the home of the elderly fisherman. What a pleasant surprise. There were all kinds of domestic animals. The goats bleated, the chickens crowed, the ducks quacked as they swam peacefully in a pond of sparkling water. There were healthy-looking green herbs, a garden filled with different trees, each bursting with their fruits. Prede walked through the garden, gazing in awe, and on the fisherman's instructions, set the basket at the back of the hut where the fish will be killed, cleaned, and dried. The elderly man said to Prede,
"Thank you for your kindness. But before you go,
pointing to a palm nut tree,
please help yourself with as much palm nuts and fronds."
Prede's face broke into a huge smile, as wide as the Mississippi.
Ooh! Wow!
Prede exclaimed in pure delight, thanking the elderly fisherman profusely. He helped himself to as much as he needed and cut the amount of palm fronds that he could carry back. The elderly man also gave him some roasted fish, spiced dried locust, honey, and palm wine. The boy, overwhelmed and equally delighted, thanked the fisherman, and just as he turned to go, the elderly fisherman called to him and said,
"After processing the palm nuts into oil and into a vessel, get as many large vessels as you can for storage, and behind closed doors, pour in the oil."
Prede thanked him again and set out to his journey back home. On getting home, still sporting a Mississippi-sized grain, his mother, who was standing outside with not a little bit of annoyance and worry on his late arrival. She mobilized his siblings to help set down his sack and palm fronds. His mother offered him water to drink and then said,
I was beginning to get worried, my son.
She exclaimed,
Ah, the palm nuts are so ripe, and the veins of the palm fronds thick. I can see these other items.
pointing to the gifts.
How did you get them? I know I did not give you money for grocery shopping.
Setting down the cup, Prede told his mother of all that had transpired as he set out on the errand. The mother was very grateful for the wage on the kindness her son shows the elderly fisherman. She lifted the fish in her hands to thank the Most High. While they were eating dinner, he told his mother of the instructions the elder had given concerning pouring the processed palm oil into large pot vessels. She was skeptical about this information and was not fully convinced to do so, and they retired for the night. At the dawning of the new day, Prede's mother set to process the palm nuts. By evening, she was done, and Prede said to his mother,
Mama, let my siblings and I go and borrow some vessels.
She approved and said,
I too will join him to ask.
with a smile on both their faces, they set out to borrow as much vessels from neighbors and friends. They folded up the seats and moved furniture to a corner to make room for all the vessels they had borrowed. Some vessels were placed on top of others. It was late into the night, and the children were feeling sleepy, so they all laid tightly together to sleep, except the mother, who stayed up. She began pouring the palm oil in the vessels. She poured into the first and then the next. She woke up her children to help. Prede got up first and joined in helping his mother until all the vessels they had borrowed was filled with palm oil, and then the oil stopped. The aroma of the oil was amazing. The taste was pure. Prede's mother made a lot of money from selling the palm oil. Many people loved her oil. Jealousy came upon the heart of the town's palm oil merchants, a couple who were not happy that the widow was said to be selling the best palm oil in town. Their faces became contorted with emotions of bitter jealousy and anger. They said to themselves, "We must not allow anyone to outshine us. We must dislodge this widow from this business." Like a cunning serpent, the oil merchant's wife pretended to be friends with the widow. Allowing passage of time, she asked Prede's mother who her supplier was, and that she would like to change her own supplier, as the oil Prede's mother sells is the best. Prede's mother told her how they got the palm oil from the elderly fisherman's garden. The couple, with the intent of using this deceptively gained information, plotted to take over the town's palm oil business solely for themselves. So they sent their son and coached him on how and where to meet the elderly fisherman. Hiding behind the shrub was the son of the palm oil merchant couple, and on seeing the elder on the path back from fishing, he jumped in front of the path of the elder.
Good day, sir. May I help you in carrying your basket?
The elder said,
I have not received such offer without asking before. Well, you may.
The boy carried his basket and also asked for the fishing net. As they walked, he began to get tired and said,
Sir, the distance is too long. Please, I will not be able to continue this journey.
He gave the basket and net back to the elder and went back home. His parents were waiting anxiously outside, and when they saw him, they were rejoicing. They uttered within themselves, "At last, we will command the respect and finance of this town." Only afterwards to realize their son came back empty-handed. They were deeply disappointed. 7 days later, with a heart fully premeditated in disguise to get the miracle of the widow, they convinced him to return and accomplish the mission. He eventually helped the elder again, and when the elder gave him some dried fish, dried locust, honey, and palm wine, the oil merchant's son rejected the items, asking for palm nuts instead. The elderly fisherman said,
I gave you gifts, but it seems you are interested only in my palm nuts. Tell me, child, were you sent to pick palm nuts to make a meal for your family?
No, sir. Yes, sir.
He stuttered.
Yes, sir. My mother is a widow, and she asked me to help get some palm nuts to make meal for us.
Granted to pick the palm nuts, he headed back home. His parents were so happy and vowed to frustrate the widow after they filled up more vessels than she. The instruction was to borrow vessels, but they had already purchased several large vessels and tanks with their money. They asked their servants to process the palm. The oil is too small and does not even taste as good as the widow's oil, they complained. When it was time to pour out the palm oil into the various vessels, they couldn't do so behind closed doors because the tanks and vessels were too big to be put into their house, and so they had to pour the oil outside the house. The oil merchant's wife didn't see much difference in it, and she said it's still the same thing as far as the workers have retired to their place and cannot see them pouring the oil. They began to pour the palm oil into the first vessel. When they saw the poured oil was not able to fill the first vessel, they tried turning it back to the original vessel and then poured it back into the container. And as they did, the oil still dried up. Frustrated and disappointed, the husband told his wife he was tired and went into the house to sleep. The whole family retired and went to bed. At the dawning of the new day, the wife went to wake her husband and her son. Her son woke up, but the father could not. She wailed aloud about her husband's death and how they encouraged their son to lie to the elder that she is a widow because they were jealous of the widow. She narrated all this to the crowd who came when they heard a loud wail. The village and the widow all went to the foot of the Blazing King mountain, along with the wife of the deceased oil merchant and her son, to meet the elder fisherman. He was sitting outside his house. The son and mother knelt down before him and confessed their plans against Prede and his mother, and how they had lied and plotted to get the palm nuts, and how it resulted in her husband's death. Dear friends, fight the evil desire called greed. Openly and in your heart, celebrate and pray for those who are doing well or better than you in your eyes. Pray for them as you want others to celebrate and pray for you. This story is an adaptation from the classic folktale with the story of the widow in 2 Kings chapter 4 in the Old Testament, and the story of Ananaias and his wife Saphira in Acts chapter 5.
Let us hear the lessons you have learned from this story. You can reach us at storytimewithsamaritanwoman@gmail.com.